All right, now it's time for part 2, and that is stitching the blocks together. Now, stitching wool crazy stuff is a lot different than stitching our regular patchwork. There's going to be a little bit more forgiveness in this type of stitching, so you might be a little nervous about it, but in the end, we're going to put this together, we're going to trim it down, and then they will all be the correct size. So just pay attention to how I set this up and you will be very successful. This wool project is stitched on a foundation. To do that, we are going to need 20 15-inch squares, and then we are going to need 4 6x58 long lengths for the border. Now you could piece that foundation, so you don't have to have that length. You could piece some of that together. It's just a foundation. You're not going to see it. It's going to be the inside of your quilt. No worries on how you get those lengths. And it doesn't even have to be muslin. It can be old fabric that you might not like anymore or you're not going to use, so you could use some of that up. You just need a base to secure this wool to. And the reason why is because you don't want your wool just swishing all over the place. If we're stitching it to a foundation, it's going to be much more controllable. All right, so now I have laid out a couple blocks here. So you take your foundation and you lay it down, and then here, you're going to lay it down onto your board. These boards are super nice if you can't tell that by now. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay down your piece. I'm just going to do it off to the side here for a minute. And then what you would do is you'd lay down your center piece. And then I put 2 little marks here to show where the second one goes. So that's going to go like that. And that is all you really need to mark. Do you see this here? I don't know if it's in the picture good, but all I did is put this over, laid that down, and I just traced that inside hex onto one of the foundations. And then I put these 2 little lines here to show where 2 connects to 1. You're going to do that on all 20 of your squares. So that's what you would do. I don't want to take the time to show you how I did all that, but you put 1 down, then you put 2 down, and then you just keep going around and around. Now when you get to the end, and I am near the end because I did do some practice stitching ahead of time, you really want to make sure like you save like the last 6 to lay out all at once so you don't have 2 of the colors the same. And what I mean by that is I left this one like this. So do you see how there's a lot of dark here? Now, if I just waited till the end and this happened, I couldn't switch anything. So you want to do it with like 6 blocks left so you can switch them out with some other ones as you go. So see how I have these all nice and ready to go for us? Now what's really helpful too is to have one in the same direction as your sewing one. So I'm just going to leave these here so when I start to sew this one, I have something to reference on. And if when you get to the last one, you can just use your sheet, your tracing sheet. So here is a peek, a little sneak peek ahead. So this is how many I have done already and already trimmed down to 11.5. So you're going to get some where it has a couple oranges and things like that. And if that really bothers you, you can always switch them around. But in the whole scheme of things, it really does not matter. So here's the foundation, just to give you a peek at how that sewn looks from the back side. I'll just go through them all. And when they get put in the quilt, they're going to all be turned different directions. So see how I have 2 there? That's just the way it goes sometimes. All right, so I'm going to set those aside. Now here is the one I'm going to stitch. And I'm going to lay these other foundations out of the way because we have to stitch and press, stitch and press, stitch and press. So I have my pressing mat here and my iron over here. So I should be all ready to go. Just a couple things on my list here. I am going to use, I would use at least an 80 needle in my machine because of this thicker wool. And I'm going to move my stitch length a little bigger than what I normally stitch at cotton. So I usually stitch a smidge under 2. I'm going to probably stitch a smidge over 2 on this wool. All right, and I am going to still use my 1/4 inch foot. These are 1/4 inch seams that we're going to be stitching. You don't have to be like so precise. You could just put on a regular foot and just like follow the edge of your foot. It doesn't have to be a scant. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as you're consistent. That's all that really matters in this. Okay, and if I didn't mention, this quilt is going to finish at 55 by 66 with the borders, and that will be the next part that I will do a tutorial on. But let's get started. All right, so now I'm ready to start to stitch to the foundation. So I'm just going to slide this over a little bit. I have my foundation here. I'm going to lay number 1 right there, and then here's my 2 spots that I marked there. So all I'm going to do now is flip 2 onto 1, just like that. And I'm going to put it under the machine. You can use pins if you want. I really don't. As long as I got it in that spot it needs to go on, it shouldn't move on me. There we go. All right. Just going to set that up there for now. I lay this here, and I'm going to push that out. Take my steam iron and press that. All right. So then I'm going to go number 3. So see how it's nice to reference that it's the same orientation. So I'm going to flip that. Now what you want to do is it's going to get smaller and the shapes are going to get bigger. So it's very easy to get confused, but you just know that it's all going to work out. And that's why I wanted to show you this in a tutorial. All right. I'm going to flip it back. So do you see how this is much bigger now? It's okay, and just line it up the best you can. It's so different for me to stitch because I usually, all my bed of my machine is flat in my table. So this is just a little different. But they do go very quickly, and you're going to love this because it is fun and easy. But I know it can be intimidating because the wool is not cheap, right? So we want to make sure we don't make any mistakes. Flip it that way. So see how it kind of bows out here? We're going to follow, we're just going to put our piece on and we're just going to follow the edge here. We're not even going to worry about that little bit of overhang there. And I forgot to mention, you want like a medium to dark thread when you're sewing with these darker wools. And steam is a must. You want them nice and flat. Turn her back around. All right, I'm following my picture here. There we go. Now this one goes on next. So see how much bigger they are? They're not going to match. It's not a problem. You just got to make sure you put the right one on next. So if you need to, you pull this paper back out. So this was 7. Now the gold one goes on next. That's 8. So see that difference there? So see, this is where I'm going to line up at the shortest point, which is right there. And I just split the overhang between the two. My presser foot must go down by itself. I didn't realize that. And don't worry if your foundation looks like it's getting a little rumpled. Just keep flattening it out with the steam. All right, 10, so now 11. Going to be over here. Stayed up that time. Oh, that's weird. Go. I got to line it up on that shortest line there. And this one has a little bit of a straight ledge. That's that part right there. So that's actually the edge of the block. All right, that looks better. All right, 13 is this one. All right, last one is 14, and that's this one right here. So I'm just trying to push all the fullness out. There, now I can flip it over. Give it a little press that way too. All right, now I'm going to trim it up to 11.5. All right, so what I look for is my shortest part. So I need 11.5. And sometimes you just eke it out that it's just the right size. So I know my edge here I'm going to put at 11.5. This is a 12.5-inch ruler. So see how I just made that one? So sometimes they're that close. So I got 11.5 on that side. So I'm going to go 11.5 on that side. So that was my closest edge. All right. Okay, now I'm going to trim this one here. Nice and straight. And then one more, 11.5, 11.5. All right, and there we have your 11.5-inch square. All right, I just want to point out that something like this might happen because guess what? It happened to me. So as I'm trimming my block, I realized that one of these fabrics didn't come right to the edge as I needed it. So all I did was sew on another little piece here and then trim it. So nobody's going to know that this is just an extra little add-on piece when they look at the quilt overall. So if anything like that happens to you while you're trimming your blocks, just know that you can always add on a piece. Okay? Now part 3 is going to be, I'm going to piece all of these together and then we will move on to stitching the borders.